The objective: to deliver the NBA to you like no other. News, play breakdowns, power rankings, storylines you never hear talked about anywhere else. It's all straight shots here, fired by straight shooters. S and Gunn. This is the Objective Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Objective Basketball Podcast. Baraheni here. You see him. Hello. Hi, everybody. Lauren is joining me. She's back. After a week away, I talked to Chris Herring without her. I talked to Jackson Frank without her. I knew she would have loved getting into those conversations. Lauren, welcome back. Give a little round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Yeah. I am sad that I had to miss those conversations because those are two of my faves that cover the league with us. So I am definitely sad that I had to miss those, but great conversations were had. So that's all that matters to me.
Yes, that is true. And you guys should tap in. They had a lot of insight about the NBA playoffs, breaking it down, doing some analysis and all that fun jazz. Ladies and gentlemen, it is set. Everything is set. The regular season is over. Finito, done, finish. Comprende, it is done. All 82 games for every single team has finished. All right. But boy, was it a crazy final weekend of regular season basketball. The Dallas Mavericks gave up on everything that was right. They broke the sanctity of the NBA and are now being investigated for purposefully tanking, even though the Portland Trailblazers have been doing that for over a month. There is the Portland Trailblazers themselves. You know, Damian Lillard had some very interesting comments about the summer and how active they need to be, how they need to get on the same page and really push forward, quote unquote, to win now. Those are side topics that are going to be happening. But the main topic of conversation that everybody is talking about right now is the punch. And I'm not talking about Rudy Tomjanovich in 1970. I'm not talking about Draymond Green in 2023. I'm talking about Rudy Gobert punching Kyle Anderson square in the chest, okay, in the middle of a huddle in the most important game of Sunday's final regular season day. It was the Pelicans versus the Timberwolves. The winner of that would have got the 8th seed, which means you would have got 2 shots at making the playoffs. And the Timberwolves miraculously came back despite Jaden McDaniels breaking his hand halfway through the game, despite Rudy Gobert being sent home halfway through the game. The Timberwolves, thanks to some great shot making from Karl Anthony Towns, some impressive two-way sequences from Anthony Edwards, who looked like a star, they pulled this out. They won. They are now the 8th seed. But they're kind of screwed. And I did that. I gave you guys a beat right there. That was a beat. I paused because it's a change in the conversation. They are very, very screwed. Like, genuinely, extremely screwed right now because they're going to be facing the Los Angeles Lakers for the 7th seed tomorrow. Rudy Gobert has been suspended by the Minnesota Timberwolves for that game because of the punch in the huddle. You can go and check it out on the Googles and the YouTubes of the world. And on top of that, they will be without Jaden McDaniels, probably for the rest of the season because he broke his hand. And they will be without Naz Reid, who also broke his wrist, and will be out for most likely the rest of the season. So now they're down 3 players going up against the Lakers who have looked good since the All-Star break. We've talked about them a lot here on this podcast. Lauren, I guess like, where do you sit before we get into play-in predictions and playoff predictions and all that stuff? Where do you sit with all of the things that happened over the weekend? If you want, you can touch on your Mavericks, you can touch on the Dame comments, and then obviously the Rudy stuff here.
Yeah, I'll definitely start with the Rudy stuff. I think it's important to note that with a lot of these teams, there are always going to be personalities that don't mesh. It's not always going to be rainbows and butterflies and we're traveling and we're having fun and we're NBA players that are just having a great time together, living the dream. That is not the reality. There are always going to be personalities that collide and things that don't necessarily go right. And I think if you're looking at every individual team, the goal for them is to always keep those things private, keep those things internal. But every now and then, like you mentioned, the Draymond Green one that was supposed to stay internal, again, another conversation. But we see these moments happen, and every now and then they come to light and they get brought to everyone for everyone to see. And those are the moments where, if you're the team and you have to have a quick bounce back from that, it's very, very difficult to do because it's awkward. There's tension, and there are unresolved issues because, again, it's a quick turnaround and you can't solve everything overnight. And so, Rudy being suspended for this game against the Lakers, I think is deserving. When it comes to physical blows like that, it's a very that speaks volumes. And so I was baffled that it happened. And especially when you're the guy, technically like the new guy on a new team like that, I think that says a lot. That says a lot. He
came in. He was supposed to be the leader, the veteran presence
to solve all the problems,
coalesce everybody together. And yet he is the stir of the stick in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, they already had an underwhelming season. I think most people would say an underwhelming season, and then Mike Conley kind of comes in and is helped and slapped somewhat of a Band-Aid on it, but there's still this overarching conversation of, okay, well, we went all in on Rudy Gobert. Now what? We were expecting, at least in the initial season of that, we were expecting more, and it wasn't more. And so now you add this kind of level to all of this, a punch that took place in front of in front of everyone, the entire league, really. And so it's a shame. I don't know what it's going to mean for them. I'm always quick to say, oh, well, you can't just assume that, okay, well, something like that happens, now the team's blowing up, or they're going to move on from him or anything like that. But going into this pressure cooker environment that is the play-in and then ultimately the playoffs, if they can get there, there's even more pressure on there. And I go back to Al Horford when he was on JJ Redick's podcast talking about each step of the playoffs. Obviously, this was before the play-in, but each step becoming what's exponentially more difficult, and there's no really, it's not linear. And so I'm curious to see what that means for the Timberwolves and what that means for some of these personalities, because Anthony Edwards is no small personality either. And there are, questions about this ultimately becoming his team. And so what does he have to say about all this? You've got all these voices, and they're kind of at a place where it's like, well, conversations are going to start be having about Cat if things don't start getting on the same page, and they're certainly not headed the right direction.
No, they are not. Things can only get worse from here, to be honest with you, because, given the injuries that they have, they could potentially fall completely out of the playoffs. They could lose their first game against the Lakers. They could lose to the winner of the Pelicans and Thunder game. And then they would be a lottery team, which means that the Utah Jazz would be getting a second lottery pick this season, because the Timberwolves traded this year's lottery pick, among many other things, in order to acquire Gobert. So it's a little bit of, I don't know, poetic irony. It's something, whatever your literature word would be for this, it is very coincidental. It is ironic, if you will, that at the end of the day, it is Gobert that is coming back to haunt them. I'm not going to lie to you. Start of the year, when this trade went down, I was a big fan. I was completely on the opposite side of this. I thought this is exactly what the Timberwolves needed. It was a fine price to pay, even though it was a lot. It saves and helps them out in an area that they desperately need. This is going to be perfect for them. It has not been that at all through 82 games. And they've honestly, to be honest with you, especially when Cat is back in the lineup, they've looked better with Gobert off the court. So I'm very curious to see how that situation progresses even past this season, what they end up doing, what their decision is with Gobert, with J-Mac, with Karl Anthony Towns, even with Naz Reid, who was a free agent this year,
Yeah, that's a big thing that I think is getting overlooked right now. Specifically, it got talked about more at the trade deadline because it was a conversation, but I think going into this summer with all of these questions, you heard Kyle Anderson say on that clip, there's a decision to be made this summer. And so there are a lot of things that I think are uncertain right now in Minnesota.
Yeah. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll get into the play-in and what that means for the Timberwolves in a second. I want to let you kind of touch on your Mavericks and the whole situation there, because that's what was, I mean, to top off a crazy weekend, the Mavericks were the center of the discussion for probably 24 to 48 hours of this weekend, because of the fact that they essentially tanked out of the play-in spot. They decided they weren't going to go for the play-in. It didn't matter to them that they were going to be the 10 seed. They gave Oklahoma City the chance. Shout out to OKC. They deserved it this season. They had an awesome year. They fought through their way through it. Dallas, on the other hand, has crumbled post All-Star break with Kyrie, with Luka. There's obviously the Luka situation here. What's your read on it all? Because, you know, I've heard who is it? Bam McMahon. You know, he's on the Brian Windhorst podcast all the time. He talks about it very, very openly. He was talking about it today on their podcast too. It's not as if Luka is ready to jump ship, but it's always in the back of your mind with a player like that, because he's already a top 5, top 10 player in the NBA. He's already made multiple all NBA teams. He's probably going to end up on the MVP ballot this season. And he has, after this season, he has 2 years left on his contract. So you're asking yourself, what is going to be next for a team that has not been able to build a consistent contender around a guy of this caliber? So what's your read on this whole situation? Yeah,
I mean, with Luka, God, I am not over here like, man, it's just any day now that he's going to jump ship. I don't personally feel that way, but I have overheard things that I don't know if people don't care if people hear them or what, but I have been at games where I've heard people say that the things that get put on social media in terms of like, oh, well, we're not there isn't any pressure from Luka. Those are just rumors. That's just people wanting to have the conversation prematurely. I have heard multiple times that is garbage, and that everyone knows that there is internal pressure to get something going. And so, again, that's all just hearsay, but comes from some well-known faces. And so, with Luka, I think that the Jalen Brunson situation has been beat to death. We all know what it was. And so now it's like, okay, if you're looking at what they're doing now, it's now you got to push all those chips in. And we've been saying that for seasons now, but they're finally in a place where they have a number 2 who has done very well next to Luka, even though the rest of their roster and what has happened, even though they haven't performed well, their numbers and their fit together and them showing that Kyrie can get certain units to play with pace. The Kyrie pickup is something that I believe Luka was happy with and is still happy with. I believe that. That is my current read on the situation. Yeah. I also believe that they now feel that they're in a position to, whether they stick with their 10th pick, whether they jump, or whether they get knocked out of that, they drop down.
They're going to move that thing, man. They're going to move that. You know,
what do you mean? What do you mean?
They're going to trade that pick, man.
You think they're going to trade it?
I just I have a sixth sense about these things. Okay. Look, realistically, let's think about this, right?
Yes.
They're in a situation where they don't have a ton of assets in the asset pool. If there is a player that ends up being available this summer, and hey, today there was a report that I'm not saying they're going to go for Trae Young, but I'm saying this type of thing happens all the time. Bradley Beal just said that his frustration level is very, very low. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying they're going to go after these guys, but I'm saying you have a pick, you have a lottery pick potentially in an all-time level draft. You have, I believe, other picks that you can attach alongside that. Plus Josh Green, plus Jaden Hardy. If you want to include other players, you can.
Right.
Now you have a decent enough package to go ahead and do that. I don't know. I mean, if we're talking about aggressive, that's what I would deem as aggressive. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think it'll definitely be on the table. I'm curious to see. I mean, if they jump up past like the 10th pick into the top 4, that'll be the first time that I believe that they've improved to that degree. And so for them, I do think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the draft lottery, because what I was going to say is, even if they lose it, even if they fall out and, they tanked and missed the playoffs and they no longer have a pick, even in that scenario, I think right now they're operating under the impression that Christian Wood is gone and that they are getting Kyrie back. I think that is where they're at. And so even if they lose the pick, they now have next year's pick, is no longer protected. And then they've got the 3 consecutive years after that. And obviously there's difficulty trade. You can't trade 2 back-to-back years, but there then becomes options of, okay, we have Reggie Bullock's salary. Maybe Mitchell Robinson isn't so happy over in New York. that they love Reggie Bullock over there. Like there are all these scenarios out there where they can go out and find the big, because it's very clear that the big is the missing piece. The defensive minded big is the missing piece on this team. And then you can go out and always make around the fringe moves to get guys that can come in and at least get you to average from a defensive like wing guard standpoint. And so I think that there are going to be options for them. And the reason when it comes down to Luka that this is the season where there's a lot of this is the season where you got to show up is because one of how bad this last season was, but also because you now have Kyrie, you now have the picks available, you now have Josh Green and Jaden Hardy showing that they are intriguing young players that you can include in a deal. You have everything to go out there and make a deal. There's zero reason for you to not get a deal done. And Christian Wood, again, you're losing him. I would be shocked if he stays. If he stays, thank God. But assuming he walks, you have to go out there and get it and trade for a big because you can't sign one. And so you've got the young guys, you've got the picks, whether you keep it or not, you're going to have moves draft wise, and they need to go get that done. And the rim protecting defensive minded bigs, the type that they need, there isn't exactly a long list of guys that are tradable that you can go get. I swear to God.
I mean, he might be available this summer.
He might be available, and that I mean, they might have to get into a situation where they're like, we might have to take something bad on. I'm not ruling anything out because that is truly how desperate they are. And so the thing that I will say is no matter what move happens next, it's got to get signed off by Luka. They know that. They did it with Kyrie. They're going to continue to do that until he feels like he's in a place to get it done. And so I still stand by the Kyrie move. I still think that was the right move. And it's all going to come down or I don't want to say it's all going to come down to, but things are definitely going to shift based on them keeping the pick or not keeping the pick. And I think one thing that gets overlooked, this is the last thing I'll say on it. One thing that gets overlooked right now is I think a lot of people are like, well, if the Mavs lose the pick, they are screwed. And that's just not the case. It definitely is a big blow, a big gut punch, but like, if they don't lose the pick, well, then now they have next year's pick that's unprotected. And now they can have all these picks that I don't want to say all these picks, but they have a handful of picks that now open up that they did not have last year that are in the near future or potentially the post Luka era. And so the first years too, right after the post Luka era. And so I think that those are going to have value and that there are going to be deals that they can get done. They just need to get out there and do them.
Hearing the words post Luka era are terrifying if you're a Mavericks fan. I don't think that's the situation you want. I don't think Mavericks fans ever want a post Luka era. I think they would rather ride this out until Luka decides to retire a Dallas Maverick. I think that is the end goal. But I mean, it's different. I've talked about it before, but this is different than Dirk. This is not Dirk.
Oh, it's way different than Dirk.
It's way different than
I will give the fan base some credit there. I think that they know that. They don't think that he's Dirk. And I think that's kind of like a well-known, just with the transition of eras. And that I don't think everybody says that that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is a thing. It's a fact. And so with Luka, like that's kind of what I expect. I do think that he will give them the opportunity to really put the pieces together, which is also part of why, if they do get this 10th pick, I'm curious to see, okay, do you really care to deal it? Or on the one hand, are you like, well, we might as well make a draft selection, one that we feel confident in, and that could also contribute to, I hate to paint this picture.
It depends if you love future. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
How much do you love the guy?
Yeah. It's if like you will, I think any NBA front office is going to do their due diligence, and being like, hey, who do we like? And if they love a guy at 10, they know they're going to get that guy at 10. They probably end up keeping that pick. That's the case for Portland too, because I think Portland's in a situation where they might end up getting a top 5 pick, and I think in that situation, it's tough to say, hey, Damian Lillard, who's nearly 34 years old, I think 34 years old. Hey, we're going to actually trade this top 5 pick for you in order to get, I don't know, insert character.
Yes.
I think it's hard to quantify that to someone. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be a fascinating postseason. It is going to be a fascinating offseason, and we're going to get into our playing predictions. But first, get in on the action and make your bets with Sports Interaction. Every hit, every shot, every basket, every goal from all your favorite teams and players, like Rudy Gobert, maybe, or any of the Timberwolves stuff that happened yesterday. It might be one of your favorite players or not. Doesn't matter. Win with competitive odds, the best in live, in play, and more ways than ever to get in the game, like Minute Madness. I know, Minute Madness, such a fun game. Or our exclusive games with so many opportunities to win by the minute. Download the app. Use your QR code. If you're in Ontario, download it, do the damn thing. It's on the bottom of the screen here for me. Or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Okay, so we are doing play-in and playoff predictions, okay? I will set the table for you here so that we can get going, because it's going to be an interesting one, ladies and gentlemen. It's set. It's set in stone. In the East, the play-in is the Toronto Raptors facing off against the Chicago Bulls. Winner of that faces the loser of the Miami Heat and Atlanta Hawks game for the 8th seed. The Hawks and the Heat end up playing for the 7th seed, and that is your play-in tournament in the East. In the West, you have the New Orleans Pelicans facing off against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The winner of that will play the loser of the Lakers versus Timberwolves, and the Lakers and Timberwolves are playing for the 7th seed. So, Lauren, with that being said, would you like to start with the East, or would you like to start with the West?
Let's start with the East to save the Raptors listeners the anticipation of getting over to the East.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Okay, look, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote about this at sdpn.com. You can go ahead and read it if you'd like. It was a preview talking about what we're kind of expecting here. What are the expectations with both teams? Both teams are kind of stuck in the middle a little bit of the Eastern Conference. They're not really they're stuck in a position where they don't know which way to go. Now, to be fair, the Raptors do have a little bit more flexibility than the Bulls do in terms of pick capital, in terms of young guys that they can look forward to. But at the same time, they are stuck. And they're in the same position here where they have to win a game or they end up hitting the lottery. So when it comes to the Raptors and Bulls, I guess my prediction here would be that I think the Bulls will not handle business. I think the Raptors will win. The Raptors are a great home team. The Raptors have handled business against the Chicago Bulls pretty much all season. And I think the advantages that the Raptors have in terms of length and size really stop and deter the things that Chicago does well. Neither of these teams are good shooting teams, which is going to hinder the road team, in my opinion, a little bit more because, you know, oftentimes road teams end up shooting worse than the home team, especially in playoff situations. So I think the Raptors pull this one out. When it comes to the other side of the bracket of the East, I think I'm going to go ahead and say that the Miami Heat will pull this out. The Heat have dominated the Hawks head-to-head all season. They've won 3 out of their 4 games against them. Jimmy Butler has gone insane against them pretty much every single time he's played. I think Jimmy is a guy who the Hawks will have trouble with, even though, you know, they do have some good wing defenders that they could throw out there. I think the Hawks are just a little bit too undermanned. I just don't believe in them to be able to beat the Heat in a one-off elimination game. That's it. But I do think the Hawks have the Raptors' number. That's pretty much been the case all season. The typical floor spacing, the shooting that they provide, the dribble penetration of Trae Young and the quickness that he has, I think has posed a great threat to guys like Fred VanVleet who struggle containing quicker guards. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Hawks end up beating the Raptors in Atlanta, and the Raptors end up going into the lottery. They shift out to lottery odds, and it'll be Miami as the 7th seed and Atlanta as the 8th seed. That's what I would pick as my predictions. Now your turn. Okay.
So I'm pretty much similar the whole way except for with Toronto and Atlanta. I've got Miami taking care of business there because same reason as you. I just believe in them more. But then I have Chicago beating Atlanta after losing to Toronto because
sorry, you mean Chicago beating
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry, my mistake. Because I genuinely don't believe in Atlanta right now. And I just think that I went back and forth on this because I was like, okay, Quinn Snyder, the playoff atmosphere or the playoff adjacent atmosphere. Can they get that done? And I don't know that I'm there. I'm not sold on it. So I do think Atlanta's gonna be getting the boot. And I think that's where we're headed.
So you think it'll be Toronto or Chicago?
Toronto or Chicago that eliminates them?
Yeah.
I think it'll be Chicago.
Okay, so Chicago beats Toronto.
Chicago beats Toronto. Yeah,
I'm excited. Look,
I do think so.
none of it would shock me. None of it would surprise me. It really wouldn't. The Raptors have been one of the most inconsistent teams all season. I mean, they finished the season 41-41, and it's just because they could never pick up steam. They can't pick. They very much so struggle to win multiple games in a row for a majority of the season. So I agree with you. I think it'll be tough for the Raptors to end up pulling out 2 games in a row against 2 teams. You know, the Bulls, they've done well against all season, but the Hawks, even in the games that from the games that I remember, and yes, I've watched all the Raptors games, they just did not have any answers for the dribble penetration of Trae Young. And when you add DeJounte Murray to that, when you add guys like AJ Griffin, who can beat you off the bounce, guys like Bogdanovich, who could beat you off the bounce, the Hawks just have too many offensive weapons. And I think that it really throws a wrench in what the Raptors want to do defensively. And the Raptors struggle to keep up offensively. Now, who knows? The Raptors have not played the Atlanta Hawks when they've had Jakob Poeltl. That does change things for them. So maybe it's a different equation now. But at the same time, I think I'm comfortable saying that the Raptors probably don't end up getting the 8 seed here. Sorry, Raptors fans. I'm sorry.
I think there's a chance. I think we both think that there's a chance.
There absolutely is. And look, this Raptors team with Jakob Poeltl has looked different than it has before. So I don't know. I again, like it's really at this point also, I think a lot of Raptors fans are saying, what is the point of getting the 8 seed? They're sort of in the Mavericks boat where they're like, hey, we might as well pack our bags here and just, you know, we're okay with getting the play-in nod, give Scotty Barnes and Precious Achiuwa and Gary Trent Jr. the one playing game, and we'll call it a day. But I don't know. I think they do have the advantage in Chicago. I just don't know if they have that type of advantage against Atlanta, who has sort of had their number and is just a bad matchup for them, to be honest with you. So, yeah, okay, we're on the same page here in the Eastern Conference. That was my transition effect. I know, ladies and gentlemen, very, very cool. Let's do the West, okay? I'll go ahead real quick. I think OKC versus New Orleans is going to be a fascinating game because Brandon Ingram has been absolutely on a tear since the All-Star break. Just some of the best basketball of his career. I mean, if he was playing like this all season, he'd probably have, considering for an All-NBA nod. And then on the other side, you have Shea, who is just an enigmatic scorer, a guy who isn't going to let you rush him, who makes great decisions, who is like this great slow-mo type of player. I love the way Shea plays. This is going to be a fascinating ball game. Zion Williamson will not be playing, so the Pelicans are undermanned. But I do think the Pels' size advantage in having a Jonas Valanciunas is going to be a big factor. Now, to be fair, and Pelicans fans will address this, they'll talk about this all the time, they have not consistently gone to Jonas Valanciunas often. They really haven't. And that's part of their struggles offensively, is not incorporating the big man more in the middle, not getting more paint touches in there and getting him actively involved. The shooting is also a big factor. I think OKC has a little bit of an edge, but to be fair, I think both teams aren't the most outrageous shooting teams. That being said, I could see this going either way, but I think I'm going to go with the Pelicans. I think they're just the more standard team. They have a little bit more rotation players here, if you will, that I trust in a play-in game. So I'm going to go with the Pelicans. And then on the other side, you know, we mentioned it with the Timberwolves, but they're going to be without Naz Reid. They're going to be without Jaden McDaniels, no Rudy Gobert. I'm not going to say it's going to be a slap. I don't think they're going to get destroyed. I think when you have Anthony Edwards, when you have Karl Anthony Towns, you'll always have a chance. Mike Conley knows what he's doing in playoff games as well. But I'm going to have to say the Lakers. They played better basketball throughout this last month. They've looked very, very good. They're in a rhythm, and they don't have all this craziness going on. So it's the Lakers. Now, between New Orleans and Memphis, which are the two, Minnesota, which are the two teams that ended up playing and the whole Rudy Gobert situation happened in, I actually think the Pelicans end up pulling it out this time. And that's because of all the things I just mentioned. No Jaden McDaniels, no Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert, the whole kerfuffle that's happening. Now, Gobert probably will end up playing in that second playing game if the Wolves end up losing their first one. But I still don't think that the Pelicans, that the Timberwolves will be able to handle business there. And I think the Timberwolves will lose that game and the Pelicans will end up winning that game. So my 7 and 8 is the Lakers and the Pelicans. Your
Lakers.
choice now, Lauren.
God, this is so. I am in the same boat. I have zero faith with the Minnesota versus the Lakers.
Yeah.
I'm picking the Lakers there. I do think I'm with you that the OKC New Orleans game will be interesting, but I do have New Orleans there, and then I think Minnesota. I think that'll be it. I think that'll be it for them, and then I think they're gonna have these questions just looming over them, and it's hard for me to have any sort. How can you have that many factors going on? And then you go in and take care of business in probably one of the most, because it's like you said, it's a one-off game. It's do or die. It's very hard for me to put any stock in there.
Okay,
so I'm with you, 7 and 8.
You're with me? Okay. So with that being said, our Western conferences are the exact same. Our Eastern conferences are different. Well, yes. I have Atlanta in there as the 8th seed. You have Chicago in there as the 8th seed. But regardless, okay, that doesn't really matter too much here. Mm-hmm. Let's start with the Eastern Conference. I will quickly give you my predictions of everything that I imagine in the first round of this Eastern Conference. So I have the Bucks beating the Atlanta Hawks in 5 games. I think Atlanta probably pulls out one singular game, but the Bucks end up winning that pretty comfortably. Mm-hmm. In the 2-7 matchup, which will be Boston versus Miami, that's going to be fascinating. Jimmy Butler always shows up against against Boston. It's going to be an incredible series, but I do think Boston is more talented. They're more trustworthy in terms of their rotation. Boston wins that in 6 over Miami. Philadelphia handles business against Brooklyn, a Brooklyn team that looks very, very different to what they were earlier in the season. I think Philadelphia wins in 5 over the Nets. Cleveland versus New York, that is probably going to be the most entertaining first round series in the Eastern Conference. Donovan Mitchell versus the team that everybody says Donovan Mitchell should have been traded to. I think it'll be Cleveland in 7 over the Knicks. I think it'll go to 7. I think the Knicks will have some great series from Jalen Brunson. Julius Randle's probably going to be back. I just think Cleveland's defense has been so formidable all year. They're the number 1 defense, and that size factor is going to play a huge factor. And I kind of trust the Cavs offense a little bit more than the Knicks offense down the stretch. So Cavs in 7, that is my predictions. Now,
okay. I like it.
Keeping in mind, I'm going to keep going for you. I'm going to just keep going here.
Go all the way through. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go all the way through. So now it would be the Bucks versus the Cavs in my version of this bracket. Okay. And I think in that it would be a very, very fun series. It would be awesome. I think the Cavs would have some really, really fun games in there with Mobley and Garland and Mitchell. The young guys will have their moment to shine. But I just think the Bucks are very, very well matched defensively. They have the size that can compete against them. They're deeper. And they're just the more reliable playoff team. I think experience will play a factor here. Milwaukee in 6 over Cleveland in the second round. Boston against Philly. Boston has had Philly's hand, like they've pretty much had them matched every single time they've played this season, except the last time they played where Philly won the game finally, despite Boston had so many injuries. But I still think it's going to be a competitive series. I think it'll be the most competitive series Philly will have in a very long time. But I still say Boston. So I'm going to say Boston in 7 over Philadelphia, a game 7 series. It'll be fantastic popcorn material, which means we get an Eastern Conference Finals of what everybody probably imagines, which is Milwaukee and Boston. And my prediction here, and I talked to Chris Herring about this, this was my essential prediction, is that what team is going to falter first? Will it be Milwaukee's defense that has proven all year that it's great, or Boston's offense and shooting? And in my opinion, I think the shooting variance is a bigger factor here. I think I trust Milwaukee's defense more. And I just think when you have the better player in the series, I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the world. That's the ultimate trump card that you can throw out there. So with that being said, and hopefully Chris Middleton is healthy, I think that's a big part of this. I think Milwaukee in 7 over Boston. They have that home court advantage now. I'm going to pick Milwaukee, which means Milwaukee is my Eastern Conference champion. That is my Eastern playoff picture right here. That is the predictions that I'm giving you guys. Lauren, your turn. Go for it.
Okay. I'm going to do my best to keep it straight because. Okay. Round 1. Where are we at with round 1? Okay. Milwaukee versus, hold on.
You had Chicago.
Yeah, hold on. My formatting got messed up. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Do you want me to send you the NBA.com thing, or you?
No, the sad part is that I got it up and I still am like, can you tell my brain is dead from tax season? Thank you very much. Okay, Milwaukee. I have Chicago, so I've got Milwaukee in 5 on that one.
Okay,
and then I've got the Cleveland, New York. I also think that's going to go to 7. I think Cleveland's going to pull that one out. And then Philly versus Brooklyn. I've got Philly in 6 on that one.
Cool.
And then Boston versus Miami. I've got Boston in 6 on that one. I think Miami's going to get feisty, and I think they're going to push it to 6.
Okay.
Round 2, Milwaukee versus Cleveland. I've got Milwaukee in 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got, who is it? Philly versus Boston. I've got Philly in 7.
Woo! Okay.
I got a little spicy for you.
Okay.
And then I think that Eastern Conference Finals, no matter who's there, I think it's going to 7. No matter who's there, in my mind, there's no way it doesn't go to 7.
Yeah.
And in that one, I do also have Milwaukee taking the Eastern Conference, because I think Philly, we've talked about it on here, the pressure cooker, the things that they're facing. And to me, in this environment, when you have a few too many things stacked up against you and you're looking at the other side that's got a lot going for them, or maybe even less against them, whether it be the Chris Middleton health or really anybody's health over in Milwaukee, I think those things have big implications in a playoff environment, which is why I have more faith in the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in general, the Bucks they have been the best team in the NBA since December 1st. They have the best record in the NBA since that time. Their defenses look formidable all season. They have a perfect recipe with the point of attack of guys like Drew Holiday, Javon Carter, Chris Middleton, and then you have the help side guys in a Giannis Antetokounmpo, in a Jay Crowder, and then you also have obviously the man in the middle protecting the paint, a guy who could probably win Defensive Player of the Year this season, in Brook Lopez. I just think their defensive nucleus is so solid, and I rely and I trust that much more than any other team's offense. Now, to be fair, the Celtics have had the upper hand against the Bucks pretty much all season. The Celtics have been very, very good against the Bucks all season. They've shown that they can, Milwaukee does give up a considerable amount of threes still, even though they've adjusted their game plan. And I still think that, the Celtics find themselves comfortable with the drive and kick, create a 3, get the Bucks in rotation. They've shown that works. That's a recipe that works against the Bucks, especially when you're the Celtics. I just think, Grant Williams isn't having the best season that he had last year. He was having a really good season last year. He's not going to be hitting a bunch of shots like he did in Game 6 and Game 7 of last year's series. The Bucks now have Chris Middleton back. Obviously he sustained another knee injury, but from what everybody's reporting, the MRI came back clean. It's just a regular knee bruise, if you will, and he should be back and ready to go. That's going to be a huge factor in the series. I think if you look back at last year's Bucks-Celtics series, missing out on Chris Middleton's shot creation was such a massive part of Milwaukee's whole situation. And on top of that, I think Drew Holiday is having a better season than he was last year. Brook Lopez is having a much better season than he was last year. The Bucks, in my opinion, feel like the team to beat in the East. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if Philly ends up beating them or if the Celtics end up beating him. But that's because, as I mentioned on the pod last week, those 3 are the teams to beat in the NBA. They are the 3 favorites. It's just that they're all in the same conference, and it makes it that much tougher to assess and really be like, oh man, we gave it our best go, because the Sixers might be able to give it their best go. Even if they beat Boston in that second round matchup, they still have to face the Bucks, who have been the best team in the NBA. So I think that's fair. I think we called it good. And you know what, Lauren, like we kind of ran over it and said, the Bucks will handle business against Cleveland or New York. I could see a world where it's a little bit more difficult for them. I could see a world where the Knicks or the Cavs, whoever moves out of that, spot, forces 7, maybe pulls off an upset. I mean, I could see it. It's a smaller chance, but the shot creation of Donovan Mitchell, the playmaking and shooting ability of Darius Garland, if Evan Mobley has a great offensive series, if he kind of breaks out, if this is his coming out party, why not? I could totally see that happen. Okay, let's switch over. So the Eastern Conference is a little bit more clear cut. It's a little bit more obvious who's going to be coming out on top. Although, between the top three, you can kind of decide and make your picks, make your hot takes. Lauren also mentioned she was taking Philly over Boston. Some would say that's a pretty hot take. Let's move over to the West. The West is way less clear cut. Way less clear cut. There's just so many questions, and we've addressed this on our podcast with Jackson Frank. You can go ahead and listen to that. Why there's so much craziness happening. The top of the West has just been unbelievably healthy. The Nuggets have been healthy. The Kings have been very healthy. The Grizzlies, who haven't been healthy all season, have just been very good defensively, and that's been able to carry them in games. Whereas the second half of the Eastern Conference, the bottom half of the Western Conference playoff race is just, it's dealt with so many injuries. It's dealt with so many different questions that it's thrown a wrench in their seasons. Now, to be fair, they're still very good teams, and they could pull off upsets, which I have a lot of upsets. So let's talk about this. I'm going to go ahead and do mine, and then Lauren, I'll throw it to you again, okay? In the 1-8 series, Denver versus New Orleans, because I had New Orleans coming out of that play-in and getting the 8 spot, I have Denver in 6 over New Orleans. I actually think New Orleans will put up a pretty good fight. Maybe even Zion comes back. Who knows? But I do think that New Orleans, like they put up a good fight against the Suns last year, they're going to put up a good fight again in the first round this year. Denver in 6 over New Orleans. In the 2-7 series, which is Memphis versus the Lakers, oh man, this is the one where I'm pulling up an upset. I know Grizzlies fans are going to be mad at me, man. Grizzlies fans are going to be very mad at me for saying this, but I think it is going to be the Lakers in 6 over the Grizzlies. I think it will be, I just think losing out on Steven Adams, I think losing out on Brandon Clark, those are the types of guys that you need to be able to throw out at Anthony Davis. They're going to be missing a ton of size, and I understand they have other guys. Santi Aldama is also hurt, but they have other guys they can throw out there, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be maybe going to be the defensive player of the year. I just have questions about their front court depth, how they're going to be able to guard a LeBron James, how they're going to be able to guard an Anthony Davis. There's a lot of questions there about their rotation and defensive awareness. I agree. The Grizzlies have been great defensively all year. I just think the Lakers pose a matchup problem because of the size that they can throw out there, because of how good AD has played this year. I think AD versus Jaren Jackson Jr. is a matchup that is tougher for Jaren Jackson. I think the guys, the point of attack kind of creators for the Lakers in a D'Angelo Russell, in an Austin Reeves, even in a Dennis Schroeder, those are the type of guys that can take advantage of, say, a John Morant or a Desmond Bane at the point of attack. So I know the Grizzlies have been good defensively this season. I think the Lakers are just a matchup problem for them. So I'm going to go with the Lakers. They're going to go in 6 over the Grizzlies. Now, in the 4-5 matchup, it is the Suns versus the Clippers. And this would be a very, very close series if Paul George was back. I really do think it would be a different series if he was going to be playing in this one. But I just think the Clippers have been very confusing all season. I think there's just been so much inconsistency with that team. They haven't been able to get their rotation right at all. And that is partially due to the injuries. But I think the Suns are talented enough. They have Kevin Durant, obviously. They have the shot-making ability. Yes, I have depth concerns for the Suns, and I think the Clippers will be able to win a couple games because of that. But I got Phoenix in 6 over the Clippers. When it comes to the Kings versus the Warriors, this is going to be an incredible series. Mike Brown versus his former team. Movement offense, motion offense versus motion offense. Two of the most exciting teams. Northern California rivalry. It's everything you want in a playoff series. This is going to have it. It probably is the best playoff series in the first round, bar none, probably. I just think Lauren knows where I'm going with this.
I love it.
Listen, man, Kings fans, I love y'all. I really love y'all. You guys were my 3rd most watched team this year. I had a lot of fun watching this team. It has been amazing. I really do think that the Kings have a chance, too. I think they have a really good chance at winning this series just because of how great they've been all year. But you're facing a team that has been doing what you're doing, but has been doing it for 7 years. They have this motion offense, and I know there's new pieces to what the Warriors are trying. There's the Dante DiVincenzo's of the world. There's the JaMychal Greens of the world who are not necessarily used to that system, but this is a tried and true system. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, now Jordan Poole, now Andrew Wiggins is back. They know the system. And in my opinion, the defensive prowess of the Warriors when they're locked in, when there's a Draymond Green, when there's a Andrew Wiggins, when there's a Kevon Looney and they're all healthy and they're ready to compete, that's still one formidable defensive team. And the Kings have not been a formidable defensive team. The Kings have not been able to address any of their defensive concerns pretty much all season. So I just think the Warriors know how to do what you're doing, and they've done it before. They've done it in a playoff setting. They've played defense before, and the Kings this year have not been able to play really good defense. So I'm going to say Golden State in 6 over Sacramento. I think the Kings end up winning a couple games for sure. Maybe even force it to 7. I could see the Kings winning in 7. I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. But I can't bet against the Warriors. That's been a bad bet almost every single time, except 2016 NBA Finals and 2019 NBA Finals. It's been a bad bet to bet against the Warriors. I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Warriors over that. So now I'm just going to keep going here real quick. Okay. Phoenix against Denver in the second matchup. I just think Phoenix is an awful matchup for the Nuggets.
Yeah.
But I think depth is going to be an issue here. I think the fact that the Suns don't have a fifth guy that they can rely on, even a bench that they can rely on, is going to be an issue here. I know the Nuggets still have to figure out how they're going to survive in the Jokic-less minutes, but the Nuggets are deeper. They have Christian Brown. They have Bruce Brown. They have Jamal Murray that they throw with their bench lineups a lot. They have a lot of weapons that they go to. I'm going to say Denver in 7 over the Suns. I think it'll be a good series. I think it'll be hard fought, but I think Denver ends up pulling that out. The Suns in 4 guy will not be able to say Suns in 4 this time.
Yeah.
And then this series is going to be wild. Warriors versus Lakers in the way that I have it. That would be popcorn right there. I mean, the NBA would be salivating at the thought of a second round series with LeBron James and Steph Curry and Anthony Davis and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and all the craziness that is that. That would be primetime television every single time. I'm going to go with Golden State over the Lakers. And I'm going to say Golden State in 7 over the Lakers. They would have home court advantage here. And I think the Lakers, their point of attack defense has not been good. They don't have a recipe for stopping a Steph Curry. And I think Golden State ends up winning it. That means my Western Conference Finals is the Nuggets versus the Warriors. And I just think that, if you were to tell me that the Nuggets and Warriors are playing in a playoff series tomorrow, and the Nuggets are the 1st seed and the Warriors are the 6th seed, I would be laughing. I would genuinely be laughing because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It should be reversed. What's going on here? But I'm going to go ahead and say the Warriors in 6 over the Nuggets. I think the matchup problem, again, like I said, that Steph Curry poses to what the Nuggets do. I think it's in a similar vein to what the Suns can throw at the Nuggets, but the Suns don't have the necessary depth to supplement what they're doing. The Warriors do have that a little bit. They also have guys who can guard your secondary players. Again, Andrew Wiggins is a massive part of this. So I'm going to say the Warriors make it to the NBA Finals once again, despite a wildly miraculous, crazy, out of this world season where they end up as the 6th seed. They make it to the NBA Finals, and it's the Warriors versus the Bucks in the NBA Finals. That is my bet. And I think that the Bucks end up winning the NBA championship over the Warriors in 7. I think it'll be a great one. I think it'll be an all-time level series, and I think it's one where Giannis is just going to dominate. Yes, Draymond Green is a great defender, but Giannis is a different type of animal, and I think he's going to dominate that series. So Bucks in 7 in the NBA Finals over the Warriors. That's my pick.
I like it. This is going to be a good one. So, okay, number 1, Denver versus New Orleans. I've got Denver in 6 as well. I think New Orleans also going to put up a fight, but it's not going to be enough. Yeah. And that's a testament to Denver, not a knock on New Orleans. And then you got Phoenix versus the Clippers. I have Phoenix in 6 as well. Or I don't remember if you said in 6 or I have Phoenix in 6.
Yeah.
And then next up, Sac versus Golden State. I'm a believer.
Oh, you're a believer.
Sac in 7. Woo! That's what I've got. I've got.
I like it.
I am not doubting the Beam team. I think that I will say, I should preface this. The Western Conference playoffs is going to be a freaking marathon.
Yeah.
It is going to be a marathon. I fully believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to doubt Sac. I don't want to doubt the inexperience. I don't want to. So I'm giving them their credit. I think that this is my time to give them their credit.
Okay.
And then I've got Memphis versus LA. That's what it is. And I've got LA in 7, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
This is where I've got LA, but I think it's going to take 7.
Okay.
And then last one, oh wait, no, excuse
so now
me.
You have
That's
round.
First round. Now we're on second round. Second round is Denver versus Phoenix. I've got Phoenix in 7.
Okay. I like it. That's fair. I get it. I understand it. Yep.
And then we've got Sac versus LA. And this is where I think the experience comes in, as crazy as it sounds. And I do think the LeBron James, I'm going to give it to LeBron. I have LA in 7.
Man. Okay.
This is where I think that they're going to have enough fight in them. And that game 7 in Sac against Golden State is going to be enough to get it done, or to give them the edge. But then I think continuing to be tested is where the experience is going to eventually catch up to them. That's how I can see that going.
So hold on, and what about your Western Conference Finals? Now
my Western Conference Finals is a Phoenix versus LA, LeBron
Lakers.
versus KD, Chris Paul, the whole thing. It is a Phoenix versus LA showdown, and I have Phoenix in 6.
Okay, fair enough. And then in your NBA Finals, which would be a Bucks Suns rematch 2021.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like the rematch narrative. I think that that's going to be an interesting one, which is why, because of that and many other things, I do think it's going to be one that goes to 7, despite Phoenix's lackluster bench. And I do have Milwaukee winning.
Milwaukee in 7. Whew. Man, so look, we both picked the Milwaukee Bucks as our NBA champions. You picked the Suns as the team coming out of the Western Conference. I picked the Warriors coming out of the Western Conference. You had the Lakers in a Western Conference Finals.
I did.
They started the season 2-10.
I know.
And they, in your situation, might end up being a Western Conference finalist. That wouldn't surprise me.
I will say, let me say this. If it's Golden State in the second round like you have it, I do not see the Lakers getting past that. If it's Sac, I can see them getting it done. And I can also see Sacramento beating them. I think there are many questions with the Lakers, but I think that the group that they've put together, what we have seen, I think there's enough for them to believe, especially with playoff LeBron James. I think that they can take down an inexperienced team, but if it's Golden State, I don't know that I'm picking LA to come out of that one.
I agree with you. It's going to be fascinating. And look, ladies and gentlemen, I will say this right now: we will be wrong on a lot of this.
Oh yeah.
On a lot of this, we will be completely wrong, and it can change the complexion of things. If you had told me in the bubble that the Heat would have beat the Bucks in that series and Tyler Hero would have went bananas, and then the Heat end up making the NBA Finals, I would have laughed at you. If you were to tell me that last year, the craziness that happened in the second round, if that would have happened, I wouldn't have believed it. So there's just so many things that could change in any given playoff series. There's injuries that happen. There's fights. There's tit for tats. There's guys going a team going 0 of 20 in the Western Conference Finals to miss a bunch of threes. Shout out to the Houston Rockets. I just there's so many factors here with the NBA playoffs, and especially in an NBA playoffs with this much parity. This has just been the name of the game for this season, where everything has been so evenly split that I could hear the argument for 5 different teams winning the NBA championship, and I could understand it. You could sit here and tell me right now that the Nuggets are the clear-cut favorite and they're going to win the NBA title, and I could hear that argument. I could hear the same thing about the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, even the Suns, the Warriors, heck, even the Los Angeles Lakers, who started the season 2-10. So I that's what makes this so amazing. That's what makes basketball, the sport that we cover, absolutely insane. And folks, we will be there covering it, watching it, podcasting it, doing the whole thing for you right here on the Objective Basketball Podcast. Do the subscribing, do the liking, do the rating for us. We really appreciate you on Spotify, Apple Pods, all that stuff. From Lauren, we'll see you guys later. Peace.
Follow hosts at Just S Baraheni on all socials and at The Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA to you like no other.